few days ago, I finished my first adventure as a dungeon master. And even if I'd like to say that it went down pretty well and we had tons of fun with my campaign, I realized that there's a lot that can go wrong when you're leading your friends through an adventure. And I have to admit that I did my fair share of mistakes. Here's my list of mistakes I made as an inexperienced dungeon master, so you don't have to make them. Number 1. Over-preparation. When I was going to my first sessions, I wanted to do everything just right. I was excited and nervous and I didn't want to disappoint my players. So I spent nights and nights of preparation, writing down pages and pages of dialogue and descriptions for some obscure characters in weird locations. I dedicated 2 pages to Bilgor, the one-eyed barkeeper. The problem is, you're never really going to know beforehand what your players are going to want to do in your world. Of course, you gotta give them a general storyline and some guidance, but forcing them to stay on your path and railroading them through the plot isn't really the fun way to go. After all, Dungeons & Dragons is all about the freedom of the players. What do you mean you don't want to meet Bilgor, the one-eyed barkeeper? To avoid disappointment and wasted hours of preparation, learn to improvise. Feel comfortable with being spontaneous and just write down the cliff notes. Number 2. Under-preparation. Improvisation is important, and your ability to come up with ideas on the fly and adapt to certain situations is your biggest asset. However, trying to just wing it can go wrong when you're still inexperienced. Going into a session with no preparation at all will have you stuttering through the adventure, slowing down the game because you constantly have to wade through your books and sources to come up with encounters, treasure, or characters. So you guys want to take the left path? That's a great choice, that's it there. Shit. The perfect solution is to find a balance. As I said, write down the cliff notes of your plot, get yourself some random tables for loot, names and NPCs, and maybe have a dungeon ready to go. My best sessions so far were the ones where I had only a few pages of vague ideas and lists to pick and choose from whenever a situation asked for it. Number 3. Sessions took too long. This sounds so logical and simple, but trust me, getting the timing right is hard. You have one player who can barely focus for an hour, another player who is used to 8-hour role-playing marathons, and another player who feels cheated if you end a session without hitting the mega dungeon. The thing is, one tired and worn-out player is enough to drag the game down. So ask around if everyone is still pumped after a while, and don't be afraid to end the session even if you didn't reach a certain checkpoint or you didn't really have a big battle that day. A short, exciting game that ended a bit too soon is a way better memory than a long, exhausting game that ended with 2 players falling asleep at the table. Number 4. Clinging to the rules. As I said, as a new dungeon master I wanted to do everything just right. And even if most of my players haven't played before and were not that familiar with the rules of D&D, I wanted to stick to the rules as close as possible, which made me very much afraid of messing a few things up. As a result, I put the game on hold quite a few times, just to find some minor details in the books that weren't even that important after all. Food consumption, food consumption. Where the hell do I find the price for renting a donkey? Before you hit the brakes and disturb the flow of the game, just come up with a house rule for now and write it down to look it up next time. No one's going to beat you up about some tiny inconsistency, so just keep the ball rolling and focus on the one thing that's important. You all gotta have fun. Number 5. Boring battles. When I started out as a dungeon master, I was having so much fun creating towns and dungeons and leading my players through a land of traps and stories that I ended up half-assing another very important part of the game. The battles. Understanding how fights work in Dungeons & Dragons can be a bit overwhelming at first, even if it really isn't that hard after all. But whenever I threw some monsters in the game, I couldn't shake the feeling that everybody, including myself, just wanted to get it over with. At first I thought some of my friends just don't enjoy that aspect of the game that much, but then I realized it was mostly my fault, because honestly, my fights were plain and boring. If you dare to put a little bit of effort into your battle scenes, it can be an awesome part of D&D. Spice up the fights with some special terrain, unique surroundings, let the enemies have a weird strategy. Embrace the battlefield as just another playground for your creativity. And that's about it. Except for those 5 missteps, I was a perfectly competent and flawless dungeon master from the get-go. Anyways, I hope this will help you on your way into the world of Dungeons & Dragons and make you a little bit more confident while plotting your first campaign. If you enjoyed this and you want to see more, tell me about it or hit some of those weird buttons down there. Or don't. Thanks!